and grab a seat. I really appreciate that you're here on time because the new stereotype is that Chicano time is on time. So excellent. And what we try and do is we try and curate a lineup that really brings out different facets of the book. This particular event is the first time we've been at this particular place, which is the Houston Media Source. I want to thank them for hosting us. But I also want you to know that you're in Studio A. We are recording this. So there's two actual shows going on. We're recording one of these for history. Super high quality. You're going to see some high definition cameras here, the great lighting. And the other one is the live stream right now. So if you go to the Nuestra Palabra Facebook page, you'll see it there, or our YouTube page. And that's the one that we want to share with folks, get into schools, and really promote the writer after this. I also want you to know that Nuestra Palabra is a bookstore that shatters barriers to books. We go to where the community is. Our goal is not just to present a book one day. Today, we've curated a lineup that's going to celebrate Jazmine's trajectory, reveal facets of the book, treat her like a writer, because she is one of the leading writers of our time, and it's so wonderful to have her book come out at this time. We're honored to get to host the Houston launching of it. But at the same time, throughout the course of the evening, we're launching more careers, because you're going to see some writers who present for the first time, maybe some for the second time, some who've been published in different publications, some who don't have a book yet. But Nuestra Palabra has been going on since 1998. And in that time, some of the writers that presented for the first time in front of folks just like you, for live streams just like this, have gone on to publish their own books, earn PhDs. Some have become poet laureates. And I think that's really what's powerful about our movement. At the end of the day, we want to get books into the community. So it is key for you to tell folks to buy the book. But we need you to really spread the word, because we want more people to know about this book, because we know how hard it is to get our voice out into the community, which I think is one message from El Paso, 5 families, 100 years of blood, migration, race, and memory. It is our history that is either ignored, actively erased, or co-opted. So what's fantastic is that we get to celebrate our terms on our terms, bring you a national voice, but plant the seeds for more readers, more leaders. The other thing that I'm going to mention throughout the evening are some of the barriers that we're facing. And I'm going to have to tell you more than once. We, as Nuestra Palabra, became Librotraficantes when Arizona banned Mexican-American studies. I tell you all that because, once again, our history, our culture is being expunged, not just from middle school libraries that we were used to hearing about, not just high schools, now universities, libraries are being defunded. They're dismantling Mexican-American studies programs, gender studies programs. Jazmine's book should be taught in every university in Texas at least. Right now, they're pulling books by our hand out. There's only one way to get them right now, is when we spread the word. And I think that's what I want you to understand, is how powerful we are. So as headlines maybe depress us, we have to remember that we are powerful. We can spread the book. So on that note, the lineup we've curated is going to consist of 3 additional speakers. We'll culminate with Jazmine. And our first speaker will be a debut writer sharing one of his poems that sheds light on the work. Our second writer will be our own producer, Rodrigo Bravo, who's got a piece that also sheds light on the amplification of the border and villainization of the border. And then Abogada Carolina Ortuzar-Diaz will shed light on some of the immigration policies that are touched on in the book And Jazmine does a great job of revealing how this is not all new. It's been festering and going on. And then so we'll have the Jazmine read from her work and talk about it as well. So on that note, I do want you to know that. So again, my name is Professor Tony Diaz, the Librotraficante. I'm the founder and director of Nuestra Palabra, Latinos Having Their Say. We've been around since 1998. We'll have our 29th anniversary in April. But really what I love what we do is we promote students. So we always like to kick it off with a student. And Victor Gonzalez has been one of my students at Lone Star College. Fantastic writer, fantastic thinker. He's also performed on stage. He's debated, and he's got an original poem. But I want to make one thing clear: the first time he read for Nuestra Palabra was for extra credit. Okay. He's a member of LASO, the Latin American Student Organization. However, he's not taking my class anymore. So it's for the extra credit of life. And his book is, I'm sorry, his poem is a powerful poem in homage to his father. And that is part of what Jazmine's book is about. Those 5 families. So in the legacy of familia, especially for us, please welcome poet Victor Gonzalez.
Hello. Like Mr. Diaz said, my name is Victor Gonzalez, and I wrote a poem. Unfortunately, my father did pass away a couple of years ago, and as a writer, as a creative thinker and performer, I thought one of the better ways to deal with my grief was to write a poem, and it worked out. And Mr. Diaz really likes it. So I'm here to recite it for you all today. A little context. I was shaving one night, like I should have before today, and every once in a while when you shave, you get a little cut, and that reminded me that my father unfortunately did not finish teaching me all those things that a man should know how to do, and I thought I would vocalize that within my poem. The poem is titled Small Mistakes. Last night, I trimmed my facial hair. It's no big deal. Something I do every few weeks. I have no trimmer, so I use scissors. After the scissors, I have a razor to shave with. The razor that my dad never finished teaching me to use. I know enough, thanks to him. I can figure out the rest. That goes for most things, as is life. I fluff the scruff and start snipping away. I'm stressed and impatient. It's late at night. I'm tired and worried. It's late at night. In my haste, I pay a little too much attention to the show that I'm watching. I push the scissors a little too far up. I cut my ear. Nothing serious. No big deal. I was reminded that this hadn't happened before, that it would definitely happen again in the future. A small mistake. Nothing major. I didn't even bleed. But it's still there. Still a memory. Still a lesson. I am human. I make small mistakes. Maybe I'm thinking about it too much. After all, it was late at night. And really, it's no big deal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. It is fantastic as a father to hear younger generations really put their heart on their sleeve and share that. And I want you to know, Victor, that you've inspired other writers. You inspire me as a professor, and you inspire our community too. So thank you so much for doing that. And I think what's powerful is that, and I'll read the title of the book several times. El Paso, Five Families, 100 Years of Blood, Migration, Race, and Memory. What is powerful is Jazmine filtering the experience through those five families, and that speaks to how we think about family. And of course, like I mentioned, I can't give you extra credit anymore. However, however, tonight, I know you came to buy copies of the book. I'd like you to buy even more copies for several reasons. But I'd like someone to buy a copy of the book for Victor, okay? So let's applaud Victor one more time. And when your book comes out, I will be hurt if we're not the first place to launch it, Victor. But we've got a little time to get there as well. I do want to let you know that we do have food right now. Additionally, we're asking Jazmine to sign 10 copies of her book just in case you have to leave early. Do not be timid. If at any moment you're inspired and you're like, you know what, I just bought a copy. I think I'm going to buy two more for my tia and my tío. By all means, please get up. The books are in the back. You'll get the chance to meet Melissa. We've got copies pre-signed. And if you happen to have your copy and you're here all evening, she can then personalize it for you. At the end of the day, what we want to do as Nuestra Palabra is we want to stock your family library or your underground library. And we want to spoil you. So, of course, as I mentioned, we have the live stream going on right now on the Nuestra Palabra Facebook page. We've got the archive that will be saved and also donated to the Hispanic Archives at the Houston Public Library. Outside is Café de Mami. So one of the owners is from El Paso, and they are a Puerto Rican and Mexican American couple. Local business, really great coffee. So if you have a chance, please get some of their coffee as well. And I know you've had to sign in twice when you got in here. You're like, am I writing a book or what? Well, here's what we're doing. So the first signature is for Houston Media Source, so they can tell the city that the facility is being used. The second one is if you RSVP'd via Luma, we want you to check in. One, that helps us because then we can keep you posted on upcoming events. Additionally, we're going to have a drawing. So once you sign in for Luma, even if you didn't happen to RSVP and you check in now, you can check in now, you'll wind up getting a raffle ticket. And then at the end of the night, we're going to have a drawing. And tonight, we've got a couple of gifts for you, including our last showcase was with Dr. Cotera, Fleshing the Archives, an intimate genealogy of Chicana knowledge praxis, which was an awesome book. This is a signed copy. You cannot buy this from us. Okay, you can win it at the end of the evening. When Jazmine reads, I want to make sure she touches this a couple times because you'll have a cool story to tell. You can't buy this copy. There's other ones you can buy. If you got to leave early, get your signed copy. But this will become part of your family library. Or maybe this is the one you buy for Victor, but we're going to raffle one of these off, the drawing. Additionally, we're always trying to promote Latino writers. Cristina Rivera Garza, we had the pleasure of hosting her. Her book was called Liliana's Invisible Summer, A Sister's Search for Justice. She won the Pulitzer Prize. She teaches here in Houston at the only Spanish language PhD program for creative writing in the nation. We could sell this because we like you. If you get into the drawing, you could win one of these. Porque viene la cuaresma. We also have the Portrait of the First American Pope, Leo the 14th by Matthew Bunson. Of course, he's from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. He's a Sox fan. That's the reason we got it. And then finally, if you join our Instagram and post something, nuestrapalabra.org, Liz Atencio, who's the founder of Monday Paper over there. Round of applause for a Latina businesswoman, Liz Atencio, please. Monday Paper creates these beautiful sustainable journals. Sugarcane paper, soy ink, they create jobs in Venezuela. really beautiful inside for writing, drawing. She's got some back there, but she's gonna pick someone from our Instagram. So if you post tonight and she likes what you post, we're gonna shout it out at the end, and she'll pick one of y'all to get one of these as well. So I'm here to promote and sell the books because I'm surrounded by great talent, and I bring the fire and brimstone because these writers are gonna thrill you. Again, we curated this lineup to show different facets of the book. Another powerful part of the book is that Jazmine does a great job of examining the mythology of the border, this invisible line that people just walk through at some point, and all of a sudden, it's it touches every single state in the union. On that note, our producer Rodrigo Bravo, who actually has been helping us for so long, I'm gonna look up to see if Rodrigo's ready because he's actually been our producer. He helped set a lot of this up. I want to thank the Houston Media Source team for putting up the lights and sound. He usually does that. He sets up our live stream, and I think I see him in back over there. He's dedicated years to helping us get to this point. So we have a fine running machine. Books are heavy, so individually they're kind of light. When you get a bunch of them, pesan. But he's helped coordinate that. He's helped us work with Texas Monthly. We've been curating the Texas Monthly annual Taco Fest. We curate the art and culture. And he works a lot with Jose Relat, the taco editor for Texas Monthly. I tell you all that because he's going to share a piece that went viral called Surviving West Texas when he and Jose were doing what they do, archiving our history, our culture, our comida, and they got harassed by border patrol agents 3 times. And you know, this book touches on how we've always been the subject of these, from the kerosening to being pulled over. And his piece was published in Texas Monthly. It also went viral. It's great to have him now on the other side of the microphone. Please welcome James Beard, committee member, and Nuestra Palabra producer, Rodrigo Bravo Jr.
This is my first time here in this side of the stage. I'm usually behind the scenes or whatnot. And this is my first time presenting something as a writer. So I really appreciate the opportunity. And I just want to thank Tony Diaz because I really looked up to Tony. He's really been a mentor to me. I volunteered with Nuestra Palabra almost like 10 years ago now, starting. And I've seen the movement progress. And if there's been somebody that has done more for the movement, I don't know them. But I know that Tony has done everything he can to progress literacy within Latinidad when it comes to Chicano literature, Mexican American literature, and just literature overall. So I just wanted to give him a round of applause first before we go ahead and get started. Thank you, Tony. So I'm a natural extrovert, but I am nervous as hell. So I'll try to read this as best as I can. Just to give you some context and some background, my friend Jose Relat, he is the taco editor for Texas Monthly. I freelance and am a photographer for Texas Monthly. It's my way to get into things and whatnot. He and we travel. I'm not sharing anything he doesn't share publicly. My friend Jose has epilepsy, so he can't drive. So whenever we go out there, we first started driving together, and now we just do the work together and whatnot. And I really appreciate him as well because he's never been a gatekeeper. Many folks that have a platform or have some type of, kind of legacy or have built up a volume of work, they tend to maybe gatekeep or keep it to themselves. But Jose is the type of person that builds community with other folks as well. He and I were driving down West Texas back in January. And as Tony had mentioned, we got stopped 3 times over there on in West Texas. The first time was by a local sheriff's department. And we didn't think anything of it. I was doing 35 in a 30. Okay, that's not exactly criminal activity, but it is what it is, right? I can't really argue with that. And the stop, when it did occur, it was very just nonchalant, very brief. What I did think was weird was that my insurance or registration was not asked for. That's usually big revenue generators for these small towns. So the fact that he only asked for my ID seemed a little peculiar, but it didn't really matter. In the grand scheme of things at that time, it didn't mean much to us. We ended up traveling to Marfa, then from Marfa went to Presidio, and in Presidio we were exploring a cemetery. It's called the Ochoa Cemetery. It's a lost cemetery. It's really just out in the middle of nowhere. You'll be driving along this desert road. Uh, the highway doesn't even get maintained that well, and then out of nowhere you'll see a cemetery with some fencing around it, and it's a cemetery that's been there now for close to 150 years. It's still maintained. There's some people that still maintain it, but if you really just are driving by it, it's just a fleck in the sand, a fleck in the desert. You won't really see it. At that time, that's when we noticed that some of the ICE patrols were actually coming around. We were near the border, so we expected that. We understood that that was going to happen, but we definitely didn't think that we were going to be part of that story as well. I'll go ahead and read a small piece of that, the article that we wrote. We had just left the Presidio city limits when we were pulled over by the ICE agents. The agents walked out of their truck calmly, and before asking any questions, directed me to roll down all my windows. A brief look revealed luggage, San Antonio Spurs, fitteds, and snapbacks, backpacks, alongside a case of water bottles. As he pulled up, he couldn't have been more than 25, and he had the same characteristics as my mom. Her family named Charre, a storied bloodline that could trace itself to the 1600s. Maybe he was of French descent as well. The agent asked where we were going. We're headed back to Marfa. What were you doing in Presidio? We went to a cemetery. You ever heard of the Ochoa Cemetery? It's on the road we were on. He stared at me blankly. We're doing a story on lost missions and cemeteries, and why did you double back? Double back? Oh, you mean, yeah, you pulled off the road over there. Take a picture of the road sign. I can show you on my phone if you like. But you pulled over again. Why did you pull over twice? We pulled over once to see the cemetery where the marker is, and then we pulled over a second time to take a picture of the other road sign. We literally pull over all the time to capture Texas historical markers. I almost asked them if it was now illegal to explore Texas history, but I bit my tongue. Where are you headed to now? The repeated question lingered in the air for a second. I had already told him, and Jose and I could feel this was never a simple query, but an interrogation looking for cracks. His partner, a young Latina, never spoke a word but stood guard alongside our passenger side. Marfa, like I said. Then we're headed to El Paso. Where in El Paso? Where? Yeah, like where are you staying? A hotel? I'm sure it's the Fairfield. Jose's a Marriott. Look, we're doing a story and we're eating tacos along the way. Tacos? You're eating tacos? Where? Jose and I were doing stories for Texas Monthly. Jose's Texas Monthly taco editor, and we're going around eating tacos. Jose chimed in. Yeah, we're on assignment. Do you want my business card? Jose was already prepared as it was in his hand, ready to offer. The agent was quick to accept the gift. Yeah, that's good. Let me get both of your IDs. Why do you need to see my ID? For a split second, the ICE agent and I shared a stare. I could feel the tension rise, but I reversed course immediately. Never mind, here you go. The agent grabbed my ID and Jose's along with his business card, and the pair walked back to their truck, closed the doors, and we waited. We sat there patiently at first. I tried to play some songs. Jose texted his wife. I checked my phone notifications. I nervously looked at our surroundings. Purple cactus flecked the landscape, the only color that stood out besides the displaced fire hydrant that stood there alone, bright red, as if it were lost, embarrassed by its disorientation. Jose and I discussed how expensive that fire hydrant must have been to install, considering how far it was from anything. A vehicle pulled into the home across the street, the stunted, swept roof line, suggesting the home and occupants stayed low to themselves. We waited for 30 minutes. And as each minute passed, our anxiety crept up. As each second drifted, so did my imagination. What's taking so long? What's the holdup? And it turned into, are they waiting for us to step out and ask them? Which led to, what will they find? What did they find? Did I return that book to the library? Are they looking at my social media? Are they confusing my name with my father's? The doors to the ICE truck flung open and the couple walked up, each on one side of the car. The agent handed me both of our Ds without Jose's card and mumbled, thanks, you're good. The agents walked off, and the whole exchange, as much as I wanted to leave earlier, they left me asking, what the hell just happened? Perplexed by all this buildup of adrenaline and anxiety percolating, it just let out like a balloon untied, making a faint sound in the West Texas wind. I think one of the more important parts of this encounter was the fact that Jose and I really weren't doing anything out of the ordinary. We were merely just exploring Texas. It's something that we love to do, something that we always do. I post pictures of the road markers that we find across the highways here in Texas. Some of them are very interesting. Some of them are very revealing. Many of the markers that we come across before would be random, and you would see a marker that detailed some type of particular history, and then another marker that would celebrate a Confederate soldier. We would see a marker that kind of talked about a river, and then you'd see another marker that would talk about the Texas Rangers, applauding them for their history. There's history along those roads, along these highways, marked all across Texas. And it takes people to really go out there and tell their history, and tell the real history, and tell our history. And that's what's so important. And that's what Jose and I try to document when we're out there. That's what Tony does when he pushes these books, when we have these campaigns, when we do our events, when we promote authors. That's what authors like Jazmine do whenever they tell their stories. I think it's critical that we remain telling our stories and that we're steadfast with that. I'll say one last thing as an epilogue, if you will. When Jose and I went through this kind of this ordeal, we tried to get along with the rest of our day, but it was tough. It was really tough. I'm not a dramatic kind of person. I'm pretty even keel, cool, calm, collected, if you will. And again, I don't like to make things bigger than they are, but it was definitely nerve-wracking to go through that entire process, because you never know what may happen. We started writing that piece, or both of our pieces, that Saturday, and halfway through writing that at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Saturday, January 24, 2026. In El Paso, Texas, my Apple News top stories notification went off, and the caption said, "A man was shot and killed by federal agents in Minneapolis amid Trump administration's immigration crackdown," officials said. And I read that, and I literally teared up because we were in the middle of transmitting our story onto our laptops per request. And we kept writing. And 5 hours after I started and finished my first draft, I opened my phone, and minutes later, a post came across my Instagram feed. And it was an NPR news video showing the murder of Alex Preddy by ICE agents in Minneapolis' Whittier neighborhood, showing up on my Instagram reels. I had the privilege to not be close, or as close as I thought I was, to this whole crisis that's going on right now. And I think a lot of us are separated by that. But I like to just remind y'all that we are actually very close to it. And at the end of the day, we can't wait till it personally affects us. We need to seek justice everywhere, because without justice anywhere, there really is no justice. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Really powerful piece. And yo conozco, yo entiendo esa rabia, ¿no? Esa rabia cuando se pasa, pero al mismo tiempo yo creo que lo más bonito es que nosotros como escritores, como intelectuales, we can express that and become something positive, and that energy is focused. I'm saying all that for two reasons. I'm not going to resort to the easy tropes of borders that move and expand, moving goalposts. I'd rather talk about the deeper impact of these other borders that I think the book touches on as well, in that there are stereotypes that hurt our people, and then stereotypes that kind of shape the way we imagine ourselves for two reasons. One, I am so honored that Rodrigo would come up here as a writer, because he's helped so many other writers in different ways, from expanding our definition of writing. I tell you that because typically, if you think about a reading series, it's only the fine arts. I say that because I love the fine arts. However, last year, Rodrigo helped us expand what that means, and we started doing these barnstorming tours with Jose Relat, his book American Tacos, not just having reading series where you would expect them, but in taco shops, beer joints, ink parlors. I did not get a tattoo, so no, don't ask. And that led up to also working with um, the Arnie Segovia, who Arnie texts as well. And that book became a bestseller. I tell you all that because sometimes those genres aren't called writing. And Rodrigo just said he came up here as a writer, which means our own gente. Sometimes we don't call ourselves writers. So I want to do two things. One, I'm going to ask Rodrigo. So Nuestra Palabra is archiving Latino writers. It's a census for Latino writers because people think we don't exist. They don't think we like books. They don't think we write books. They don't think we're intellectuals. We're changing that. Our presence changes that. We want to count how many Houston Latino writers there are. But one frontera is that act of saying, am I a writer? I don't write fine arts. I don't have a book published. And you just saw it in that someone that helps other writers said this is the first time at an event he's helped build that he's come up and shared his work. And you're an amazing audience to share that with. I'm glad that we're live streaming right now for folks. I'm glad that we've got the fancy cameras for history. But what I would like to do, I'm going to invite folks in the audience to fill out our 2026 Houston Latino Writers Census. We've got 100 writers already. We're going to hit 300 so that we can tell people, no, you're wrong. There's many of us writers. And I'm going to start by handing it to Rodrigo. So put you on the spot, Rodrigo. Do me a favor, grab this. When you're finished, hand it to Victor. Also, Orlando Lara. Dr. Orlando Lara is in the room. Dr. Sis, they're both writers. So, Rodrigo, if you can kind of come up here, por favorcito. I'm going to actually hand you, yeah, I'm old school. So our millennial team's like, Tony, why did we get the flyers? Listen, we have a QR code, okay? The flyer has a QR code on there, okay? So up to date. So, Rodrigo, you are knighted a writer. Do you accept? And there's two reasons I'm telling you that. One, Jazmine Ulloa is a brilliant writer. Out there, she's treated as a reporter. You're going to face the dilemma of Latino writers where we're not thought of, and when we're in front of you, you're like, are you a lawyer, sociologist, Mexican American studies scholar, tourism? It's like, she's here as a writer. And on that note, we need to support each other to become writers. I also want you to know that Nuestra Palabra is having a Houston Text Fest, October 17th. It's one of these flyers down here with the QR code. We're going to be selling her book from now on at all of our pop-up events, at our online store. We only sell books by writers who we know, who are down with la gente, and whose book speaks to our gente. And we continue to sell it. As we do our pop-ups, her book will be there. It's on our online store. If your neighbors se ponen envidiosos, pero como no me dijiste, ¿por qué no estaba? You're like, I told you, pero no me dijiste. They'll get mad. You can get them a copy tonight. We'll actually have signed copies available at all of our events. And additionally, we'll have it at the book festival, October 17th. And we're calling it Text Fest because your typical book festival caters to published authors who've got books now. That means if you're a blogger, there's no space for you. That means if your book came out 3 years ago, there's no space for you. We're changing all that. We'll have the fine arts section that you've come to expect and demand. We're also going to have a section called Cool Day Jobs for script writers, folks who write cookbooks, other ways to make money writing. And the third one's probably the most controversial I found out. Robot Poets, U and AI. It's here. We should be scared of it. We're writers. We're going to manipulate and carry it on. On that note, our last speaker before our highlight of the evening is an immigration lawyer. I say all that because I've gotten into intellectual debates with people about this book. And I stop by saying, okay, if you want immigration law right now, talk to an immigration lawyer. This book is about how this has been precipitated in El Paso. This is new for some headlines, not for our gente, it's been growing. On that note, I'm like, let's bring an actual immigration lawyer as well. Yes, this book is of the moment because of those reasons, but it speaks about it profoundly. And we wanted to have one of our board members, one of the leading immigration lawyers in the country, Abogada Carolina, to talk a little bit about the evolution of these laws as they're affecting people right now. Because the book does a good job of talking about how these seeds were sown earlier, but y'all need to know what's going on in this courtroom. So please welcome one of the leading lawyers for immigration, down with the community, down with the causes, down with us. It's Carolina Ortuzar-Diaz, Abogada Carolina, por favor.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here and to share the space with the Jazmine Ulloa. This is an amazing book, and I'm the boring part of the presentation. And I'm just going to be it's going to be short. So I'm also an immigrant, and when I went to law school, I'm from Chile originally, and so I'm a lawyer in Chile, and I came to the U.S. And I went back to law school. But what I'm trying to say is, from my point of view, the I was when I went back to school here in the U.S. to study law, I was like in heaven. I just went through the hell of going to law school because I was impressed about the the level of respect of due process and what the Constitution meant, presidential value of case law and everything else, and the evolution of that. And that was really impressive. And when I started my practice in immigration law, that was you would think like why is the Constitution important for an immigrant? And you will see at every step of the way how cases will basically raise to the level of the Supreme Court, and it will change everything. One of the big deal cases that got to the Supreme Court was the ability to for people to have to respect and to protect same-sex couples, marriage, and that basically opened up what it meant, what a family was in immigration. So if you have a couple who was a person who was a U.S. citizen and an immigrant, and they wanted to get married and they couldn't get married, then that meant that they couldn't really pursue immigration relief for that spouse that it was an immigrant. Once the Supreme Court decided, whoa, we are going to recognize marriage between people of same sex, then that was a huge avenue to protect the rights of immigrants in that context of a family. And that's why this book is so um, wonderful, because when you practice immigration law, what you're talking about is families and how you have so many families that are mixed families, and you have parents that are immigrants with that status, where you have children that are U.S. citizens. But when I started reading this book, it came to my attention all of this history. So are we in a worse situation today, uh, almost 2030, than in 1900? Uh, so it looks like, there's an evolution and maybe a regress also sometimes, right? And I guess what I can speak about a little bit is the impact of the Supreme Court decisions coming down, and maybe you would think that these decisions are really affecting the way we protect the rights of people, regardless of their immigration status, and that is key. Um, so when you talk about asylum seekers and families being separated, and I see that history coming, uh, being written in this book about how people were prosecuted coming to the United States and being prosecuted for criminal charges for entering into the United States illegally. And that was the tool that the Trump administration used to separate families. because basically what the Trump administration was doing is uh, uh, prosecuting mothers and children coming to the United States, separated them from the children, and setting it into a criminal, put it into a criminal setting and leaving the children behind. And maybe one of the things that is crucial is that now we know what is happening. There's a lot of social media. Maybe back in the 1920s, 1940s, there was not such a thing. And maybe I can tell you from, even though when I practiced for some quite a long time, I I was not very aware of what happened with Japanese Americans being placed in those detention camps for months as a family. And why I didn't know about it. Well, maybe now social media is helping to um, really present that images of children in cages, maybe, right? Sleeping on the floor and things like that to help us understand what is the human toll and with respect to those families. And that is important. And unfortunately, from my from my point of view, um, when I stop working at 8 p.m. is not enough because I turn on the radio and there it is. Immigration issues all over, everywhere I go, and probably this viral or this constant bombardment of information about immigration started probably during the first Trump administration, and that it was a constant battle about what is happening today, what is changing tomorrow, and it's today the same thing. So asylum seekers right now are not coming for many reasons. The laws have not changed in the United States really since 1980, since the last amnesty. And since then, changes that have happened had made it worse, have prevented people from really legalizing their status, even though when they have children, spouses, or even parents are U.S. citizens, they are preventing from applying for a green card. And now, even though when you have those processes in place, the law is still in place, you're seeing that if you're trying to seek asylum in the state, you're probably going to deny entry. You're going to be subject to something called expedited removal. If you're allowed to come in and you pass something called a credible fear interview, because an officer understands that there is a basis for you to seek asylum, you're allowed to come in. You are released from detention. But now, even if you went through that process, now you are seeking relief before an immigration judge, but now you are detained even before seeing the judge. You are detained. You came undocumented. Can you ask for a bond? Bonds are being denied because of new interpretation of the law that it was in place for more than 30 years. We are fighting every single issue at every step of the way, now seeking relief from federal courts through something called habeas corpus. It's expensive, it's time consuming. We may be able to change the law through that. We're expecting some of these cases reaching the Supreme Court, and unfortunately, this is a long way to get there. And then in the meantime, families are going to be criminalized. So if you are in detention, the purpose of the detention is try to take people in detention because it's really hard to find a case where you're detained, separated from your family, with minimum resources, a lack of ability to find the evidence that you need to present your case, the witnesses out of town, isolation. So that is the purpose. The main thing I've seen, I guess, is to criminalize being undocumented. So the detention is critical, asylum seekers, and to be able to want to win an asylum case in court is very hard as well. It's always been difficult within the Fifth Circuit. The circuit is a jurisdiction that is under the Fifth Circuit, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, versus the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit is the generally pro-immigrant circuit that is under which the jurisdiction is California and some other states. So whenever those two circuits, and other circuits like maybe Massachusetts and some other ones are in conflict, that's when we reach the Supreme Court. That is boring. What I'm trying to say is we have a long way to go to maybe understand what are the rational way to protect, to help defend immigrants. And the other part that maybe makes it maybe worse is that not only people that maybe are coming undocumented to the United States seeking asylum or any other relief are under attack, but also legal immigration. So we're seeing people coming with work visas called H-1B, or temporary workers, or people who are coming to do business in the United States. And now we are seeing a pause. The Trump administration issued an order pausing all adjudications of all the applications benefits for people from more than 35 countries or 75 countries. It just depends on the benefits. People from Venezuela, people from Cuba, Colombia, Guatemala, and 70 more other countries are prevented also from coming to the United States legally. So right now, we unfortunately are those people whose cases are on pause are also in danger of being detained at any moment in time because they don't have legal status, even though when they're trying to seek legal ways to become permanent residents or to become or to obtain status in the United States some other ways. Protected status, TPS, those are protected status to people from certain nationalities that were allowed to remain in the United States because there's some kind of situation, a conflict, disaster, natural disaster that prevented them from return to the United States, Haiti, Honduras, Nicaragua, Nepal, some other countries. There are all those protected status were terminated. There's still some legal battles fought in court, but it's looking kind of very weak at this point. And also the other protected status that we have right now, we're still waiting for some federal court decision is DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, that protects children that people who came as children to the United States and met certain requirements of going to school and things like that. That protection is now under attack. People with DACA are being detained, even for a traffic violation. We have some incidents of that. It's not widespread, but we are very worried about those individuals who are really, in general terms, pride members of the community. So I don't want to be super depressed. But there's a lot of people fighting for immigrants, Immigration Attorneys Association, human rights. But at the end of the day, what I want to say at the end of the day is that the rights of immigrants are human rights, and whenever those rights are impacted, we are all going to suffer. Because not only undocumented people are being detained or subject to undue process, but also U.S. citizens, and that's the part that is critical. If we don't defend the rights of undocumented or legal immigrants in the United States, I think we are going to see an attack to who is a U.S. citizen, who is not, and or basically attacks to how a U.S. citizen can or should be recognized or protected. So that's something to keep in mind, and it is important to look into it and get information, and maybe we can all help to protect those rights. Thank you.
Thank you for those great insights. Thank you for all you do for the community. If folks want to follow up, you can go to the website, abogadacarolina.com. Thank you for all the support that you do and for standing up for us. And this Chicano is proud to know this Chilena. She's also my wife. She supports our group a lot. But we're united in the Pan Latino experience. Y'all have been a great audience. Thank you so much for convening with us. And as we get to our keynote speaker, we curated this lineup to show you just the breadth of this book. Do not mistake this for just a book. Um, and I'm going to start by reading the book sleeve, which is what folks will usually see. And then I'm going to take editorial privilege and let you know exactly what you're taking home with you and exactly what we're spreading through all of Texas and what I hope you'll be inspired to carry and move out to every corner of the city and state because we've got that power. And the book jacket says, Jazmine Ulloa is a national reporter for the New York Times. She previously reported for the Los Angeles Times and the Boston Globe, where she was part of a team that won the Toner Prize for Excellence in Political Reporting. A native of El Paso, any El Paso love here? Oh, all right, all right. Oh, man. Chuco in the house. All right. She started out as a journalist in Texas, where she worked for newspapers in Brownsville, San Antonio, and Austin. She's made appearances on MSNBC, CNN, and CBS, as well as Al Jazeera's documentary television program Fault Lines. And I want to make sure you touch this copy a lot when you come up there, because we're going to wrap this up at the end. The book she's holding will be for sale. So that's a hint. And it really is an honor to get to host Jazmine as a writer. And again, I want to point something out. Yes, Nuestra Palabra is a bookstore that overcomes barriers to get books to you. But we don't deal with just any book. This book, and I want to say the title several times, El Paso, 5 Families and 100 Years of Blood, Migration, Race, and Memory, is a really brilliant analysis of one of my favorite fields, Mexican-American history, which is American history. Really profound research, but also filtered through El Paso. Additionally, we know that she's one of the leading journalists of our time. So you expect that as well. What's really touching to me is the poet's eye, the writer's eye that she brings in here and filters these stories that are in our hearts and minds, disappear from headlines. They're disappearing off the bookshelves. So I'm not playing. We got to spread this book. But she brilliantly breaks it down through familia and really boggles the imagination at that definition, but in a way that touches your soul, your imagination, and your brain. And that's what our writers are capable of. I'm excited to make sure that I'm going to take this into every class that I'm able to. We're going to spread it all over. And I hope that you too today will make this powerful book part of your family library or underground library. So please join me on behalf of Nuestra Palabra, Latinos having their say, in welcoming La Mera Mera, Jazmine Ulloa. Por favor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's really nice to see some familiar faces in the crowd. So I usually start when I'm just doing a routine speech talking about how, as reporters, we're on the front lines of the harshest immigration crackdown we've seen since World War II. But I won't belabor that because Carolina gave such a good rundown of where we are today. You know, we're covering we're having raids and sweeps on the street by masked officers at courthouses and homes and workplaces. We're watching sweeps that are entangling, as Carolina said, U.S. citizens as much as legal residents. We're seeing the legal lines of, the lines of legality shift underneath people's feet very quickly and suddenly, and leaving people in very just really gray areas as far as the law. And so what I set out to do with this book was really trying to show how the foundations for all of these actions were laid down brick by brick, decade by decade in El Paso, that you can really see that to understand where we are today in the nation's immigration battles, to understand how they've shaped not only Latino identity, but American identity itself, you have to know the history of El Paso. The history of El Paso is key, that we should hold it up as much and revere it and debate it as much as we do the history of Ellis Island. But I want to, before I start, to speak a little bit about what drove me to write this book. I kind of wanted to set the scene with just reading a little bit about the place where I'm from. So chapter 1, Amazing Grace. El Paso and Ciudad Juarez sit at the foot of the mountains. The two cities remain so bound together by land and fate that they almost seem to blend, all rust and amber hues, stretching on either side of a shallow river that Juarenses call the Rio Bravo and El Pasoans the Rio Grande. I mixed the Spanish and English. International bridges connect them like arteries. People ebb and flow through them like blood. On the Mexican side, a giant Mexican flag and red sculpture in the form of an X, a symbol of country pride and identity, tower over a highway and the 30-foot tall steel bars of the border wall. On the American end, a small cluster of downtown skyscrapers rise far above the urban sprawl. Flat red brick offices and old churches, strip malls and restaurants and spaghetti soups of roadways, grids and grids of terracotta, prairie-style and stucco homes set against the Cresoti and the Yucca. Interstate 10 cuts through on its way to more exciting destinations, like Los Angeles, from metro areas that Americans tend to associate more with Texas, like San Antonio, Houston, and Austin. But it is El Paso that is the gateway to the American Southwest, a place of rugged beauty where from up above, as you fly in, the sun reflects of glistening pools and rivulets, where after the blistering heat breaks, before the city lights glimmer, the brownness of the desert is cloaked in gold. A place in between two nations, fixed, depending on your perspective, at the center or at their margins. A place that no matter where else I've lived or how long I've been gone, I call home. On August 3rd, 2019, I was nearly 2,000 miles away in Washington, D.C., where I worked as a national political reporter in the Bureau of the Boston Globe. It was a Saturday, and I was in a movie theater when my phone lit up with calls and messages. Friends and family in El Paso were checking in on each other and letting me know that they were safe. There had been a mass shooting at a Walmart near the most popular shopping mall in town. Photos and videos of the scene showed bloody victims wheeled out in shopping carts, customers murmuring prayers through the gun blasts. So I'm going to stop it right there, but because this gets into why I started writing this book, right? So I was a national political reporter. I was born and raised in El Paso, went away for college, but this massacre happened 3 minutes from where I went to high school. So within a day or two, I was back on a plane back home to cover this tragedy, and it affected people that I knew and loved. My best friend, her father, had been at the parking lot and escaped just before, just as the gunfire started. And so I thought I had a very thick skin, but there I was reporting on this while running into people that I knew and just they were trying to hold it together. I was trying to hold it together. So at the same time, like I said, I was covering politics, and we were beginning the 2020 presidential campaign, the 2020 presidential campaign cycle, and we were watching El Paso already become this backdrop to the nation's immigration battles. And people were already calling it the new Ellis Island, or the Ellis Island of the Southwest. And but in this new Ellis Island, we were watching migrants getting penned under the border. We were watching children getting separated at the border. And so I wanted to go back and really explore this violence, not as a rupture in history, but as part of this much larger, sordid legacy. And so the argument that I make in the book, right, is that El Paso is actually has long been a critical gateway into the land that would become the United States, long before Ellis Island ever existed. And it is actually in El Paso where you can see this long strain of nativism, xenophobia, and anti-immigrant history that has influenced our immigration laws and how they are enforced today. The book follows the lives of 5 families. I found those families through my reporting, I'd been reporting through many years now. You know, I'd been covering immigration for more than a decade at that point. And so, for example, like the Rubio sisters, who were born in Ciudad Juarez and then deported as children, and then went on to become the first sisters to ever serve in the California legislature. I had actually met them when I was a state house reporter uh, in California, and it was when Democratic leaders who had already gone through a very nativist period during the 90s had shown had been positioning the state as this bastion of resistance to the first Trump administration, and so they were out there. There were these really intense floor speeches at the time of these Latino lawmakers trying to reclaim their identity and reclaim terms such as anchor baby, and proudly saying, you know, I am the parents of Mexicanos, and I'm proud of it. And these sisters were one of them. The other family, the other family that I was really interested in was the Chu family, for example, the Erlinda Wang Chu. She was a Mexican, like empresa. She was a China Mexicana. But how I found that family, I found through the research. There was a photo, a very prominent photo that I had seen many times growing up, and it's of a woman with long jet black hair, and she's dressed as a soldadera, a female combatant of the war, and so she she was dressed as a female combatant of the war, and she has the bullets, you know, the bullet belts, the bullets, a bandolier. She's wearing a bandolier, and I had always thought she was a Yaqui indigenous woman because she's identified as such in some of the captions. But when I actually started doing the research, that's when I learned that she was a China Mexicana, and I became very curious about her descendants. And so I started tracking them down, and I came to find that immigration, that they were actually prominent immigration lawyers and judges, and that one of them actually had a direct tie right back to the shooting. And I won't spoil that for anyone, but but what I'm trying to say is that I was really trying to write for two different audiences, right? I was writing this for this big national audience, trying to tell this story about a different story about where I'm from. This audience tends to understand El Paso, or comes to understand El Paso through violence and death and tragedy and the drug war, and really only sees the border as that violence and the bloodshed. But I wanted to write about a different type of blood as well, right? That blood that binds, that blood that ties families across generations. And so that's why I was really focused on tracing the lives of the families, to show how immigration had shaped their experiences, and then how they themselves had shaped the country, had shaped the city, and in turn shaped the country. And then I felt like I was writing for a fronterizo audience, right? The national and then the fronterizo audience, the people that grew up like me, crossing back and forth, really living in this binational, bicultural community, right? It's really two languages, two worlds. Your life can be very, very fluid. But at the same time, as fronterizos, we don't realize how multiracial and multi-ethnic our own region is. And so I was trying to expand the horizons, right? Broaden how we think about where we're from, broaden that history. And so that's how I came to choosing the families. I was really looking for people who were emblematic of the migration experience through the past, and who really, you know, captured the diversity of the region. And lastly, I'll say, like, I think I'll just end on this, is just that this is where you can really see that there is no Hispanic invasion of the United States, right? The self-proclaimed white supremacist came to El Paso. He told an officer on the scene that he came to kill Mexicans. He put an online screed calling it, you know, railing against the Hispanic invasion of Texas. But if you understand this history, you'll see that in El Paso, you can see that, you know, most of the Southwest sits on land that was once Mexican, that our grandparents and our parents and their parents came through this path and sacrificed and with the strength of their labor, helped build this country. And Mexican identity is American identity. If you have any questions.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear that in person. Let me ask you two questions. I'd love for you to talk about, especially because there's students and professors and teachers and educators in the room. There's many great parts, but I'd love for you to touch on the part where you're talking about yourself in high school. And it's okay, we got that. But you were a high school reporter, and you wanted to cover the story of femicides. That's just sign of pure genius and courage. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in the book, I talk a little bit about how I was a high school reporter, and I was actually just at my high school yesterday, the day before. It's all blending together, but I was actually I was just talking to that teacher just 2 days ago, and we were reminiscing about that time. And it was the first time that I realized I saw it from her perspective, because she came up and she was telling my husband about how, yeah, Jazmine, she was 15, she came up to me and she said, I want to write a story about the femicides. And my heart dropped. I wanted to tell her no, but she told me that her mother was going to drive her over, and then I said yes. But yeah, I mean, that is essentially what happened. More than 300 women were disappeared in Ciudad Juarez when I was growing up. By that point, it was about, the count was at 300 women either had been murdered, dropped into tubs of acid, taken from their workplaces, from their maquiladoras, sometimes in broad daylight. Their crimes were going uninvestigated. They were not being investigated. They remained unsolved. And I will let the train go by. So I'd been reading about him, and so I contacted some of the women, and then I didn't even have a driver's license, so I asked my grandmother to take me across the border to this colonia, the type of place where there's, the roads aren't paved, it's just dirt roads, there's shoes hanging from electric there's shoes hanging from electric phone lines. And we walk into this home of this woman, one of the mothers, and they tell me their stories. And one of the mothers takes me to the room of her daughter who's gone, and it looks very similar to mine, eerily similar to mine. She has Backstreet Boys posters and stuffed animals, and I'm thinking to myself, I think it was the first time that I realized that privilege of having been born on the other side, because she looked like me. She was around my age. It could have been, it very well could have been me. At the same time, I had, my grandmother was sitting there in the room listening to the conversations that we were having. And so then afterward in the car, we were discussing a little bit of the interviews, and I was telling her that I was actually talking to one of the lawyers, that I had been talking to the father of one of the lawyers who had died defending some of the bus drivers who had been accused of killing these women, right? There were about 8 bus drivers who had been arrested and targeted, and this lawyer and his son had found evidence that they might be scapegoats, that they had evidence that they were scapegoats, and that it was actually, that the government was trying to cover it up. And he had heard his son die point blank, somebody shoot his son point blank on the phone. And so I had talked to the father on the phone, and I had asked, can you please tell me your story? And he would agree to it. But then once I called him at that time, he wouldn't answer the phone. And so I was telling my grandmother this, and she was actually the one who, said, well, do you have an address for his law office? And I did happen to have it with me in my notebook. And so she was actually the one who drove me up to the law office and stopped right in front of the stairs. And I actually didn't want to get out of the car because I was nervous about going up there. And I think that was the first time, as I was writing that chapter in the book, that I realized that I saw that experience from her perspective and how she herself was touched by the women's conversations, because what she told me was, you know, you need to be braver, you need to get out of the car, you need to go knock on that door, and I did. and once he saw me, he walked me in and told me his story. So that is that story.
That is so cool. And I'm going to ask you one more question, but we got some business to take care of. Y'all here to buy books, right? No, that's kind of. Y'all here to buy books, right? Yeah, all right. Music to my ears. Having said that, I'm going to ask one question, and then I'm going to go out to the audience. And if you two of you got a question or statement, I'll take it. And maybe if we got gumption, we'll come up here and we'll ask it, or not. We can get right to the book signing. And in a little bit, then after that portion, Jazmine's going to sit at that table and sign copies of her book. She'll dedicate it to you or to Victor if you buy him a copy. So he's going to buy him a copy of the book. And then additionally, if you want to buy extra copies to donate to students or underground libraries, you can do that. She's also pre-signed some copies. Yes, we're on the east side. Welcome to the east side. Segundo barrio. There's trains here, so they might block you in, they might keep you out, but it's very real for the folks tuning in. But if you need to leave, there's some copies that Melissa has that she will sign, and then you can get them. They're signed there, or you can get it personalized there. And do me a favor, check this one. Yeah. So this is the one she just touched. We're gonna raffle this one off. And in a little bit, that's the one she read from, so you can buy that one. Right? We'll have a really cool story to tell. And then after she's settling down, we'll have the raffle, and we're gonna give these books away through the drawing. So if you did RSVP, you can sign in now too. Make sure that you give Melissa or Erica sign in so you can get your boletito, and then we'll call it out as she settles in. And then my question again, I'm going to go on to the audience. We can get right to the book signing, but if you want to share un testimonio, algo así, you do have to come up here and say it. But the Rubio story is fascinating too, because some people may think because it's El Paso, it's just a Texas story, but it's not. And I really love that, especially Women's History Month. Can you touch a little bit more on the Rubio sisters?
Yeah, so the Rubio sisters are the sisters who I met at the State House. They were, like I said, they were born in Ciudad Juarez, and then they were deported as children, and then went on to LA, into Los Angeles. But really, when I was looking at writing this book, I really saw myself as writing a very Mexican history of the Southwest, and really showing, like, again, that Mexican identity is American identity. It's an integral part of American identity, that we're not outsiders. And then one more thing that I thought of when I was, talking about that story about the femicides. I think it's all about. I was really exploring that idea of perspective, like who gets to tell the story, how does the story change depending on where you literally, like, where you're standing, right? So that's a lot of that's very much in the book, and that's what I mean about the changing lines and changing identities, and how identities can meld and mold. That you really see that at the border, and I feel like there's so many lessons in that for Americans today. Thank you. Good. Yeah. Any questions?
Folks, we're a little shy. I think they really want to get a chance to get the book signed, have a photo with you. So this is Melissa, and that is Erica. Come on up. A round of applause for some of our volunteers. Melissa's going to walk you to the throne. Round of applause again. Yeah, wonderful. That was awesome. And as Melissa walks down, I do want to also thank Rodrigo. We got Patrick who helped with parking, Kevis helped with parking. La Mesa de Vanessa brought some great food. Also, we've got Lizbeth, who's helping us on social media. If you go to the Instagram for Nuestra Palabra and you post something, you may be the one that she picks to win one of her beautiful journals. But right now we are going to do a drawing as Jazmine settles in. So I'll let you pick one. So first one is for our last month's writer, Dr. Cotera, Fleshing the Archive, an intimate genealogy of Chicana knowledge praxis. That was awesome. Signed copy for you for coming tonight. So, say the number here. I know I can't do the numbers.
Okay, last three numbers, 538, 538.
Winner must be present. Hey, all right. Yes, come on up. Woo! We smuggle books and we give them away. What's your name? Hey, Valerie. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Valerie, round of applause for Valerie. This is Pulitzer Prize-winning author Cristina Rivera Garza, Liliana's Invincible Summer, A Sister's Search for Justice, also about the femicides set in Mexico. And she does teach, again, at the University of Houston, PhD, the only PhD program in creative writing in the country. And y'all can go home with, I could have sold this to you, man. I could have sold it. Too late. Okay. What you got?
522. Last three numbers, 522.
Winner must be present.
522.
Oh! What's your name? Catherine. Congratulations. Round of applause. A ver, ¿quién es el más católico? A ver, Leo the 15th. It's a pope. He likes the White Sox. He's from the south side of Chicago. South side, Bridgeport, White Sox.
526.
All right. Round of applause. Professor Munoz from Lone Star College Sci-Fair. He has their Mexican American Studies department. That's what's up. Approved. And again, I just, but I do want your central nervous system to be programmed that if you see me on the street in 3 months, you'll feel like you got to buy a book. Okay, so I do want that to happen. But we are not just transactional. We're here to destroy borders that keep books from our community, and we want to do everything we can to make sure this book is spread throughout Houston, throughout Tejas, and the nation. Thank you for joining us tonight. This other drawing, you're going to have to post at nuestrapalabra.org on Instagram. This will be our last drawing of the evening. We still have a little bit of food. Café de Mami's outside. Thank you so much for joining us, supporting Jazmine, Let's give Rodrigo a round of applause. Victor, a round of applause. Carolina, a round of applause. And to this evening's winner, last winner.
514. 514.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Now that's a story. It's like a script. I love it. Congratulations. Couldn't be a nicer ending. Hey, get your book signed. You can buy it right there. Get your book signed. Let's hang out for a little bit. We'll put on some tunes. Thanks for hanging out. Gracias.